Well, good morning, and thank you all for showing up so early in the morning. I really want to start by introducing a couple of special guests that I have here today. First is my dear friend Julie Edwards. I've been on the One Oak board for 24 years, and Julie and I have worked together for 20 of those years, and she is chair of the board of One Oak, and I'll talk about One Oak a little bit later. So Julie, thank you for coming. Next to Julie is my nephew, Landon Kittle. He lives and works here in Houston. He is a fuel procurement manager and is looking to build his career. He's never heard me speak, and so I thought this would be a good opportunity, but also for networking for him as well. So Landon, thank you for coming. Now you all may be wondering, I've heard a couple people say it, why do you have a Reese's peanut butter cup and a piece of saltwater taffy in front of you? Well, those two pieces of candy convey symbolically the whole point, the message I want you to leave with today, better than my words could possibly do. Now you're gonna have to do both. You're gonna have to eat the candy and hear my words. So what I'd like you to do now is eat your Reese's peanut butter cup, and as soon as you've finished it, or at least just take a bite of it. I know it's kind of odd at breakfast. And when you finish the Reese's peanut butter cup, eat your saltwater taffy. So I'm gonna give you a few minutes to get going on that. It's really just a ploy to get you sugared up and awake for my presentation. And after you eat the Reese's, eat the taffy. All right, so most of you, I think, have finished your Reese's, and I think you'll agree that when you eat a Reese's peanut butter cup, you get an instant result. I call it a transaction. You just had a transaction with that Reese's peanut butter cup. Mm-hmm. But when you eat saltwater taffy, you're in a relationship with that taffy. Yep, and I see Rob and a couple of other people still in that relationship with the taffy. And so what I have learned over my decades-long career in leadership is that there really are two types of leaders. There are transactional leaders. They care mostly about results, often at the expense of their people. Most of us have worked for transactional leaders. Some of us have been transactional leaders at times in our career. Relational leaders, they have learned that yes, they care about results, but they've learned that they get better results and healthier organizations by investing in their people. And that's really what I want to talk about today. If you look at the incredible opportunities I've had in my career, on paper, they should have never happened. I have a public relations degree from the University of Oklahoma. I don't have an MBA. I never took a finance class. I did, however, buy Finance for Dummies. It was in that Dummies series, and I bought the 10-day MBA. And that helped a little. But what really helped me was I had the incredible opportunity to work for some great relational leaders. Leaders that truly influenced my career, mentored me, invested in me, and that's what helped me the most. And what I'd like to do is share some of those stories. Now, I also work for some transitional leaders or transactional leaders, and I'm going to share a few of those stories as well. And I'm really just going to go in chronological order, and I'm going to start with my mom. Neither of my parents went to college. My mom worked as a kindergarten aide, but she was wise beyond her years. It was my senior year in high school. It was spring. I knew I was going to OU in the fall, and I needed a summer job. I'd always worked in the summers, but I wanted a job in an office and air conditioning. I had worked in fast food, and I actually hated it. I absolutely hated it. I said, I will never work in the restaurant industry. You can see how well that turned out for me over 3 decades in the restaurant industry. And the reason I hated it is because the managers were always yelling at you. And they were yelling at you, and then they would say, go out and give great customer service. They were very transactional, most of them, the ones I'd encountered. But the problem was we didn't have any corporate connections. I wasn't having much luck finding an office job. One day my mom was reading the paper, and she said, oh, I have an idea for you. It says in this article that Von Creel has been appointed the executive assistant to Governor David Boren. You should call him for a summer job. Well, I got excited. I thought she knew him. And I said, oh, so you know Von Creel? And she said, no, but his mother was your 3rd grade teacher. You should call him. And I was like, I should call him and say, your mom was my third grade teacher? That's crazy. And she said really important words to me. She said, why not? What's the worst that can happen? Okay. And so I stewed on it for a couple of weeks, and then I called his office, left that crazy message with his assistant, never expecting a call back. 2 hours later, he called me back laughing, saying no one had ever used his mother as a reason for an appointment. He invited me to the Capitol, he introduced me to the governor, he showed me around, and then he sat down and said, do you have any idea what you want to major in? And I said, yes, I think I want to major in advertising, PR, communications. And he said, well, give me a week. I want to see if I can find you a job at a state agency that allows you to do some communications work. And sure enough, he did. He found me a job at the State Insurance Fund. They're the workers' comp agency for the state of Oklahoma. And that's where I met my first relational leader. Dave Galagli was the commissioner of the State Insurance Fund. No reason to take an interest in me or to invest time in me. He was a very busy man. Oklahoma was going through workers' comp reform at the time. I didn't even know what workers' comp was. But Dave told me several things. He said, you should keep a notebook of everything you learn, the good, the bad, and you should start keeping a notebook of what you observe, and you should observe. If I ask you to file papers, read every one of them before you file them. You'll get a sense of how business communication works. And he said, I also want you to know that your voice is your most important asset, and you need to learn to use it, to ask questions when you don't understand, to speak up, to share your opinions, and you're gonna get to practice it because you're coming to my weekly staff meetings. And if you don't ask a question, I'm going to call on you. Well, so I attended the weekly staff meeting. He did something that I immediately wrote in my book because I thought it was great. It wasn't like I had any experience, but at the end of the meeting, he went around the room and asked everyone individually, do you have any questions? Do you have any thoughts on what we talked about? And he always called on the people who had not spoken first. But he gave everyone a chance to talk. And of course, he got to me and he said, do you understand what we were talking about? And I'm like, no, I'm 18 years old. I have no idea. And so he asked a very young associate, probably not much older than me, maybe right out of college, to explain workers' comp to me. And the young man did a good job, and they helped him a little bit. Excuse me. Could somebody get me a glass of water? Just run it up to me. I've got one over there. You can just grab mine. Thank you. It's morning. Thank you very much. Okay. Anyway, and so afterwards, I asked Dave, why did you call on the most junior person in the room? I'm just curious. Why didn't you explain it to me or somebody else? And his answer surprised me. He said, I didn't call on him to embarrass him, call him out, show that he didn't know what he was doing. I called on him to see if we, his managers and leaders, were doing a good enough job of training him. It is a coaching opportunity for us. And I thought that was great advice. I wound up staying there all through college, part-time during the school year, full-time during the summer, and I learned so many lessons, and he became a lifelong friend and mentor of mine. So after college, I got a job at the Williams Companies in Tulsa, great company, and my job was editor of the Williams Weekly newsletter. And we published the newsletter, we printed it on the weekend, it was on everyone's desk on Monday. My last task on Friday evening was we published the stock price for each day of the week. I was to get the closing stock price off the stock machine we had in our office. We added it to the newsletter, it got printed. I showed up at work on Monday morning and the VP of Corporate Communications was standing outside my cubicle holding a copy of the Williams Weekly. And I was 22 years old, by the way. He said, well, congratulations. Thanks to your incompetence, Charlie Williams, the former chair of the board and one of the founding partners, just killed himself this morning. And I said, what? And he said, he read in the weekly that our stock closed at $3. It should have been 30. And I just wanted to burst into tears, but I just stammered. I was trying to process it. I just stammered. I'm so sorry, I made a terrible mistake, it won't happen again. I was certain of that I was going to get fired. I didn't even know enough to know that Charlie would not have gotten his stock information from our Williams Weekly newsletter. I didn't know that. And then as he walked off, he said, well, maybe you should call Charlie and apologize to him. He said it in a kind of sarcastic manner. I thought he meant it. So I knew that Charlie Williams had an office up on the executive floor as a retired chairman, still came in. So I went to the directory, I dialed his number, he answered the phone. I apologized to him, he laughed and said, oh, you didn't need to apologize, but he said, hey, if you're not busy, come up and see me. I'd like to hear about you. And so I went up to his office, he was gracious and kind, asked me about my background, what I wanted to do for my career, asked me if I liked working at the Williams companies. My answer right then, that morning, was not really, because when he answered when he told me to call him, I'm like, oh my gosh, he is alive. And so I didn't tell him that, but had a nice chat, and he said, hey, if you'd like to know more about the history of the company, come visit me sometime. And so I go back downstairs. A few minutes later, the VP storms into my cubicle. Charlie had called him, told him I'd come up to visit him, and he said, why in the hell did you call Charlie Williams? And I said, you told me to. You literally, last thing you said was call Charlie Williams and apologize. And he looked at me, and then he said, well played. And then he turned around and walked out. He was a transactional leader, but something happened. He noticed me. I garnered some level of respect from him because I got another assignment. My other assignment, and it turned out to be a really good assignment. I got to travel with the senior executives whenever they made a presentation at an investor conference or an industry conference. My job was to carry the slide tray. The old slide carousels. I was to carry the slide tray, sit in the back of the room with a copy of the speech, and push the forward button. I was told, don't talk to the executives unless they talk to you, but I remembered my advice from Dave Galagli, so I had my notebook and I paid attention. I paid attention to the speakers, how good they were. I paid attention to what they were talking about. The CFO was very relational. He befriended me and helped explain things to me. And I realized that it was like the anthropology class I took. I was a 22-year-old female wanting a career in business, and I had the opportunity to study male executives in the wild. Because there were no female executives that I encountered at these presentations, but it was a really, really great learning opportunity. Spent 5 years at Williams, and then I joined Ad Inc., second largest agency in the state of Oklahoma. They were Sonic's agency, along with Thrifty Rent-A-Car, Getty Oil, if that dates me at all, and a number of other clients. I was a PR account executive. 6 months into my job, I went through a very unexpected and devastating divorce. Suddenly, I was a single mom of a 2-year-old little girl struggling to pay my bills. One day, the chairman and founder of the agency, Tom Tripp, walked into my office, closed the door. I thought I was getting fired. I had met him. I didn't report to him, but I had met him when I joined the agency. He sat down and he said, I've heard what you're going through, and I'm so sorry about it, and I want you to know that the agency is here to support you. Even if you need financial help, you just let me know. I'd been there 6 months, low-level employee. He then said, I also know that this is a very emotional time. You may need to just walk out some afternoon and go sit on a park bench, or go pick up your little girl from daycare early. I've talked to your supervisor. We know you're going to handle your business. No questions asked. If you need to leave, just leave. And then he said, you're also going to need some time to yourself. If you ever want a night out, my wife and I would be honored to babysit your little girl. I still almost tear up at that. Well, I would have walked on fire for that man at that moment, and I did for the next 8 years. It cost him nothing to be kind and considerate, but it gained him an incredibly loyal employee who wanted nothing more than to make him proud and to do good for the agency. I also vowed that I wanted to be a leader like him. And so it was an incredibly valuable lesson. So after 8 years, I had the opportunity to join Sonic as the VP of Marketing, and had a wonderful career with great relational leaders. We were 85% franchised, and franchisees really want to know how much you care before they care how much you know. And so I really learned a lot from working with franchisees. Our department, the marketing department, we were in charge of doing the monthly promotions that aired on TV commercials in our markets. Some of you may remember Brown Bag Special as one of those. We also did the chicken strip dinner with fries and gravy and Texas toast. And we'd had franchisees tell us that they wanted something for Lent. They wanted a fish fillet sandwich like McDonald's had. And so we worked with our vendors. We came up with fried shrimp. We could offer a chicken strip basket or a fried shrimp basket. And we tested it. We always tested everything a year ahead in multiple markets. It was a great success. So a year later, we rolled it out, 6-week promotion across the country on TV in our markets where we had TV. And to tell you it was an unmitigated disaster would be putting it mildly. A year later, nobody wanted to eat shrimp. And franchisees were sending unopened boxes of frozen shrimp back to US Foods. And US Foods, we actually canceled the promotion, stopped the TV. US Foods made it pretty clear to us they were not eating the cost of $4 million worth of fried shrimp. We had almost 2,000 stores at the time, and that was a lot of fried shrimp. My boss, the CEO, who most of my career was very relational, very beneficial and instrumental in my career, but that day he was a transactional leader. He came in and he said, "This is your problem to solve. This is your mistake. We're not eating $4 million worth of shrimp, so you and your team need to figure out what to do with it." And so I had met with marketing, operations, and purchasing, and we didn't have any really good ideas short of me opening a seafood restaurant, and I really wasn't that hot on that idea. So I learned a really important lesson. I decided out of desperation to call in our vendors. We brought in Coke and Dr. Pepper. We brought in the potato guys. We didn't care. It wasn't just the shrimp or the chicken guys. We brought our ad agency in. I said, bring your best and brightest people. They don't have to work on our account. And we had a huge summit. We spent the afternoon, we broke into groups, and we were looking for any ideas, wild ideas. We didn't have any breakthroughs that afternoon, but I said, if you have one, keep working on it, call me. So about a week later, the media director from the agency called me, and he said, I think I've solved your shrimp problem. You're gonna get $4 million worth of cable TV advertising. Cable was kind of in its infancy. TNN, TBS, CNN, FNN, and we had not advertised on cable because we were only in the bottom half of the United States, and when you advertised on cable, it went across the whole country, and that felt like a waste to us. And he said, but you're gonna get a chance to try it and see how well it works. And I said, so the cable companies are buying our shrimp? I was not following where he was going. And he said, no, there's a complex bartering network out there. And your shrimp is going to, I'm not making this up, your shrimp is going to the Canadian prison system. And I'm like, okay. And we did cable. It was very successful. We saw sales increase. Our franchise sales department got inundated with people calling, wanting to open franchises in markets that we were not in. And it was all because of 4 words that I think may be the most important words relational leaders and up-and-coming leaders can utter. And those words are, can you help me? Mm. Those are the words. I mean, I didn't know it at the time, but I've learned since then that those are very powerful words. If someone sincerely asks you for help, one, you're flattered. And 99% of the time, you're gonna bend over backwards to help them. You really and truly are. And as leaders, we don't ask for help often enough. We think we have to have the answers. We shouldn't. Our people can help us solve it. And I really learned that at Sonic. Now fast forward to 2001, I'm president of the company, I'm sitting on the board. We had a wonderful relational board member, Gene Rainbolt, chairman and founder of Bank First, a regional bank in Oklahoma City, and he had mentored me. Once I joined the board, once I joined Sonic actually and would be presenting to the board, I didn't have any experience with public companies. He had me over to his office and he said, I'm going to give you some advice. It's okay to say I don't know when a board member asks you a question. Some of us sincerely want the answer. Some of us want to just see if we can trip you up. And so don't try to answer a question you don't know. Say, I don't know, I'll get back to you. And he just gave me a lot of advice. But he's the one who came to me and said, I've recommended you for the ONEOK board. And I said, okay, why? And he said, well, they're looking to replace a retiring board member from Oklahoma City. We owned Oklahoma Natural Gas, headquartered in Oklahoma City, so they wanted a board member from Oklahoma City. He said they want C-suite experience, they want board experience, and they'd prefer a female. And it was 2001, and I said, do they have any other candidates in Oklahoma City? And he said, no. And I said, okay. So David Kyle, the chairman and CEO of ONEOK, and Bert Mackey, the chair of the governance committee, came over to Oklahoma City. Julie knows them both well. Came over to Oklahoma City to meet with me, and I decided to rip the Band-Aid off right away. I said to David, I have a PR degree. I sell burgers and fries for a living. Why are you interested in talking to me? And David laughed and he said, well, first, you come highly recommended by Gene, but we have a lot of people around our table who know our business too deeply sometimes, and I'm looking for diversity of thought and experience. And I thought that was very wise. And by the way, it was 2001. He already had 2 female board members at the time, and today we have 4 female board members. I'll be retiring, so you'll go back down to 3. But I just thought that was incredible. And David was a very relational leader. He mentored me, never treated me as I was less important than anybody else, and he gave me great advice. He said, I know you don't know our business. Go out there and read everything you can about our peers, read the industry reports, read their press releases, read their annual reports, read what the analysts are saying about them. And it's something I've continued to do, and it's advice I give to board members, even those who know the industry well, because we need to understand what our peers are doing. I read their sustainability reports, I compare them to ours, and it's been great. And ONEOK, some of you may know, some of you may not, ONEOK has gone through tremendous growth and transition and transformation, really, in the last, is it 3 years, Julie? Yeah, in the last 3 years. ONEOK acquired Magellan Midstream, InLink, Medallion, Easton. We've doubled the number of employees from 3,000 to 6,000. We now have offices not just in Tulsa, but in Dallas and in Houston. And Julie and Pierce Norton, I'm going to talk about both of them, Julie really led that effort from a board standpoint. She's the most relational board chair that I've ever had the opportunity to work with and work for. She insists that board meetings are run in a very relational manner, that they're very respectful. She sets the tone for that. And she does not, I will tell you this, she does not tolerate disrespect of each other or of the management team. We do not have a board where anyone is trying to say got you to a management employee, because you can be very fearful of going to board meetings, and that's not productive. But also Pierce Norton, our CEO, is a very relational leader as well, and he made a tremendous effort as we were integrating these other companies to meet as many employees as he could in person. He had a very deliberate and exhaustive communications plan under the theme of the power of and, because he didn't want them to feel less. And so I also had the opportunity to work with Pierce. In 2014, One Gas was a subsidiary, the gas distribution business, and we spun it out as a separate public company, pure play utility. We have customers in Kansas, Texas, and Oklahoma. And Pierce was our first CEO at One Gas, and a couple of us from ONEOK went over as well to the One Gas board for some continuity. And Pierce, from day one, focused on investing in people. And so he really set the tone for the new company. And of course, he still does that at One Oak. And the new CEO, he's not that new now, he's been there 4 or 5 years, but he also continued that tone. So I've just been so fortunate to work for companies where the leaders are relational, at least most of the time. All of us will probably have moments when we're transactional, but for the most part, they're very focused on investing in people. And now I want to talk about my last company, Quick Trip. I've been on their board for 20 years. They're headquartered in Tulsa, and they are a very relational company. They are one of the premier gasoline retailers and convenience store operators, if not the premier one in the country. And they are really well known for that. Now, Quick Trip is coming to Houston. How many of you been to a Quick Trip in Houston already? Okay. We have 13 locations, 6 more under construction, and many, many more planned. We're very excited about the Houston market. If you visit a Quick Trip, what you will notice first is our employees. How happy they are, how happy they seem to be working in a convenience store. They greet you, they truly love their jobs, and it is because Quick Trip promotes from within. When I joined the board, every person on the senior management team had started in a store. And over the years, 80% of the people in the senior management team started in the stores. They have an ESOP. Employees are owners of the company, and they act like owners of the company. They have huge opportunities for advancement. I've never seen a company spend as much money, time, and energy in training and developing their people. And actually 2 stories. One story, when I joined the board, they were getting into the food business, so I also did a lot of consulting with them. And one day I went to a store. I wanted to see the kitchen. We were building fresh kitchens in the back, and they had an assistant manager on duty. And I went up to him and said, "My name's Pattye Moore. I'm doing consulting work. Can I go back and look at the progress of the kitchen?" And he looked at me and he said, "Yes, you're also a board member." Assistant manager, probably 21 years old. And I said, "Yes, how do you know that?" And he said, "I'm an owner. I read the annual report that we put out." And I'm like, that's impressive. But the current president, it was founded by Chester Cadjo. Chet Cadjo took over his son as chairman, CEO, and president. And Chet decided that, again, they needed to groom the next successor. And so we have a new president, Kevin Thornton. He has been with the company 35 years, started as a night assistant, never intended to make a career out of Quick Trip, but quickly rose up, held all the store manager positions, became division manager in Atlanta, the largest division. In 2015, they moved him to the corporate office and began his corporate training. That was in 2015. He just took over as president a couple of years ago. He was director of operations, VP of operations, COO. They send him to Harvard. They do all sorts of training at every level, and his story plays out every day across the entire company. And that's remarkable. But Chester Cadjo, in 1984, felt like the company had grown too big, too fast, and that people were losing sight of their core value, which is do the right thing. So he wrote a memo to all the management employees, and you guys will be able to get a copy of it when you leave. And it is widely known around Quick Trip as the asshole memo. And in fact, it's on a plaque in the corporate office lobby. And so I'm just going to read some of it to you. Quick Trip customers expect and deserve well-groomed employees who give them fast, friendly service. They also expect and deserve attractive, clean, well-merchandised stores. Just as there are minimum standards for customer service, appearance, and store operations, there are minimum acceptable standards in the management of our employees. Quick Trip employees expect and deserve intelligent, positive, considerate, factual supervision. They do not deserve to work for an asshole. I am more tolerant of poor operation than I am of poor treatment of employees. I am more tolerant of poor operations than I am of poor treatment of employees. And he went on to say that Some people have failed to realize that the way we get results is just as important as the results. The way we get results is just as important as the results. And I think that's quite remarkable. And that's why Quick Trip has continued to do so well, because they invest so much in their people. Now, I'm going to plug Rob's upcoming book, because I had the privilege of reading the manuscript of the book that will come out sometime this year. And there's one sentence in the book that I think sums up everything that I'm talking about. And this one sentence is, organizational health is the ultimate competitive advantage. Think about that. Organizational health is the ultimate competitive advantage. Quick Trip has made sure that that's true. They have an ultimate competitive advantage. So I'm going to conclude with 2 questions for you. One, are you a Reese's Peanut Butter Cup or saltwater taffy? Are you a relational leader? And the second one is, the stories I've told, the one about the chairman of Ad Inc., that happened 40 years ago. And it is as fresh in my mind as it was then. So my question is, who's telling stories about you? About how you invested in them, how you promoted them, helped their careers, and changed their lives? Who is now or who will be telling those stories about you? Because organizational health really is the ultimate competitive advantage. So thank you all very much, and I'm happy to take any questions if you have any.